Sam Logue here for Green Blood Boxing. Absolutely delighted to be joined by Chris Fields, former Cage Warriors middleweight champion. We're doing a little bit of a crossover here today into MMA in preparation for the big McGregor fight this weekend. But Chris, thanks very much for joining, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Sam. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant, man. Thanks very much, as I say. I mean, like, let's just kind of kick on straight away into it. I mean, obviously, there's a lot I want to ask you about yourself, about the gym. Like, really interesting. Obviously, you're based in Swords, which is where I'm from. So we've got that bit of a link. So there's, you know, a couple of guys in your gym who I'm familiar with, who I know. So I'm very interested. But, you know, I kind of find it hard to start anywhere but the big fight this weekend. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier McGregor 2 this weekend. So, I mean, first, just off the bat, before we kind of get into it massively and into the details, but, you know, what do you think of it, and are you excited for it?
Yeah, you know, look, there's very few people that bring what Conor brings to a fight week anyway. You know, he there's an aura around the kid that kind of brings attention on, and then his performances on top of it. You know, probably there's a few guys you can think of. Maybe there's never been anyone in MMA. Well, there hasn't been anyone quite like Conor in MMA that brings the attention he brings. There's been a few guys in boxing, which I know is your kind of round, and yeah, you know, it's that kind of fight finishing style. You know, like you as a purist will, and me as a combat sports purist will love watching Floyd Mayweather compete. Because how good he is at make people miss, how good he is at not getting hit, how good he is at countering and slipping and pull counter and all that kind of stuff. But like, people love knockouts. They love seeing people get knocked out. They love the threat of a knockout all the time. That's what the heavyweights do so well, and that's what Conor brings, isn't it? The threat that he can finish the fight.
100%, and I think it's that aspect of fighting that kind of appeals to both sides. You know, not just the casual, but actually also the you know, the big, as you said, the hardcore fans as well. You know, they also love it, maybe from a more of a technical perspective slightly, but they love a knockout as well, and it's that finishing element is something that appeals to absolutely everyone. Yeah, 100%. There is nothing like a McGregor fight week, I have to say, and that's another reason why I've got more into the MMA as the years have gone by. As I said before we started there, that I'm predominantly more into the boxing, and something that really has taken over in my life over the last few years. But, you know, regardless of anything outside the octagon with Conor, I think it's hard to argue that, for example, a Conor McGregor fight week, there's nothing like it anymore. You know what I mean? His stardom, and he's kind of eclipsed the sport and combat sports, and maybe even sport in general. What do you, I mean, I suppose, again, because we kind of touched on it there, I mean, what do you think of McGregor's kind of rise? You are obviously involved with Conor. I mean, you probably know him a lot better than most people.
Yeah, so we would have been the same team and trained together for probably the first maybe 9-10 years of our careers, maybe a little bit more, 9 or 10 years. So kind of all the way up. From two of us kind of debuted around the same time, like professionally, and then kind of fought our way through the local scene onto Cage Warriors. Both of us became Cage Warriors champions. Yeah. You know, like there has always been a little bit special about Conor when you're around them. You know, maybe like not that aura that is there now. Maybe that's something like not even that he developed. That's something that he just maybe grew into. But there was always when he fought, there was always that feeling that the fight could be over any second. We all knew from training with him that he had that stupid power, you know, and you know, there's obviously a technical element to that stupid power, but there's also a birthright.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't tell me that Sugar Ray Leonard didn't work his ass off to develop his power, and you know what I mean, and didn't get it, you know. So there's some people just have that. It's just there, and then obviously they have to do all the other work that comes with being able to land those shots and all the other things that come with it, you know.
Definitely.
And the precision and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's been a crazy journey, like been crazy for myself to kind of even like look back on and be like, oh, we were just in an old cold gym, about 5 of us, all different weights. There was no one else doing, like, there was other people training with us and helping us in jiu-jitsu or helping us in kickboxing, but actually professional MMA fighters, about 5 or 6 of us sparring in a gym. And like me sparring with Conor and sometimes sparring with Ashton Daly, who was like 61 kg because there's no one else there, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was crazy times to be where he's at now and what he's doing is great. Like, and it just, like I said, like, you know, you always want to see the guy do well because you know him. And then just as a fan of the sport, you want to see like what he brings fight week and what he can do in there, you know.
100%. I mean, kind of touch back on what I was saying. I kind of fumbled about there a bit with it, but he's kind of different, isn't he, to anything we've seen almost in the combat sports world, but certainly in MMA. I mean, why, like, you obviously someone who knows him, why is he so different? Like, what is it that kind of separates him from everyone else? Is there anything that you think, oh, there's,
I think
it's that,
I think he hit on something fairly early on, and I think it was a changing of the guard in Ireland at the time. So there was a generation had just passed, and I'm a little bit older than Conor, so I fall into both a little bit.
Yeah.
So I fall into two different generations at the same time, but a generation had passed where it was almost hat in hand, and we just want to take part, and we're happy to have an opportunity. The 1994 World Cup, the 1990 World Cup, this kind of stuff, you know, it was great. We went down, we gave it our best. And then there was a whole new generation of kids coming through, and Conor probably being like just like on the cusp of that generation, going, fuck that, I'm going to win everything. I'm going to be the best. No, I don't want to just take part. I don't want to. And that was starting to come in Ireland in general. People, like, you know, there was a bit more money floating in the country. People are looking for, like, they don't want to work 9 to 5s anymore. They want to do their own thing. They want to live a different life, you know, and I suppose he leads that for them. You know, he shows it.
100%. Yeah, definitely. He gives people, I think that's one of the big things he had. Like, he's had a lot of cultural impact, I think, which is also something I want to ask you about later on. But it's definitely that kind of, he gives people hope, and he kind of, maybe this kind of has showed young people that you can, if you dedicate yourself, you can get in and you can do whatever you want to do, and you can be successful at it, which is maybe, it's just a different kind of culture to what we're always the underdog. We're always the give it your best shot, as you said, and never really had even our champions that we've had, like the likes of even say Steve Collins and these kind of guys, Andy Lee of recent times, you know, in boxing, very
Barry McGuigan, these kind of
Barry McGuigan, more modest, not you know, a little bit more not
like,
so kind of go out and grab it.
There would have been a hatred of that kind of like thinking you're the best in Ireland, and that's starting to change too, you know. I think like the begrudging has changed. There used to be almost a begrudgement of people doing well. It was like they were leaving you behind or something, you know.
100%.
I think that's changing. I think all that's changing. I speak like younger people are real, you know, and there's like, this isn't a knock on everyone. Like one of the I think one of the like most inspirational things in my own life, and I don't know what your own setup is that like my dad got up and did a job he didn't like every day to make sure we were all right. That's fucking hardcore. 100%. Do you know what I mean? Like that's there's nothing more hardcore than that. Like,
and it takes such a long time as well to kind of really realize that and to take it in and really understand it, because like it's only when you start to get a bit older, and of course I'm sure you've had a few different jobs here and there and stuff, like done stuff that you haven't wanted to do, and then then all of a sudden it kind of dawns on you, like, because I'd have a similar situation where like my father, for example, has also done something that, or was pushed into something that he didn't want to do, and then he just ended up doing it, and then it ended up turning out all right in the end, but like ended up doing something that he probably shouldn't have really been doing. And it's funny, isn't it? Because now, like, say I'll get a job that I don't like, and after like 4 months I'm like, here, I'm leaving this. I can't do this. You know what I mean?
This like, so like what we do need is like a balance between the two, where we stay, like we get our heads down, we get shit done, or we'll all end up flakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
But there is also that thing that like that generation have worked their arse off, so our generation has the opportunity to choose what we want to do. You know what I mean? Like, which is great, which is really cool.
100%,
so props to them. Let's not slag them. Not too much. I'll get a phone call later and I'll be getting it.
What were you saying about me? 100%. But look, I want to continue on that kind of on that process. We're talking a little bit about Conor, your involvement with Conor. I mean, look, he's been in the media for several different reasons. He's been a massive name almost since his UFC debut. Almost, he kind of just skyrocketed, and it only got bigger and bigger and bigger, and probably is still growing to an extent. But what do you know of the man? Like, what's Conor McGregor like? And even if you can talk to the idea of like him as a sportsman as well, and maybe how he separates himself from the bunch in that way as well. But even as a
Yeah.
bloke.
Yeah, like you know, my dealings with Conor were always good. Like we wouldn't have been the closest on the team, but like I said, we were a small team, you know, kind of. So we're all fairly tight, a tight knit group. Like all my dealings with him, all my time, we spent a few weeks together. I think in total in Iceland, there was a good bit of crack. There's a couple of videos of us eating sheep's heads and stuff like this. Like, but yeah, he's just. I think what probably is appealing is I said, like everyone knows a Conor. Like he's a bit of a mad thing, but he's like there's mad things everywhere in Dublin. You know what I mean? Every working class area has a few Conors. You know, kind of way. Like
definitely.
He's like, you know, he's a bit of crack. He's a bit of fun. He's a bit mad, bit loud, all that kind of stuff. But it's all jesty stuff.
Yeah.
And then like as a sportsman, I sometimes have issue like with people trying to get like famous people or sports people or whatever to raise their kids, you know, kind of way. I think you should be an example for your own children, not be expecting everyone else to do it for you. I don't think he has to do that. I think he tries to do it. I see he does a lot of charitable stuff, you know, which is pretty cool. And a lot of times he keeps it low key, and you hear about it from someone else, which I always like. You know, I'm not a big fan of people going around telling everyone how great they are and taking photos of themselves giving a homeless man a sandwich. You know?
There's some atrocious videos and stuff going around, isn't there, of like people setting up that kind of stuff. And there's like literally nothing. There's nothing worse in the whole world than that kind of fakeness.
He seems to have. He seems to do a lot of that stuff. And look, there's obviously some bad stuff. The guy's human. You know what I mean? And if an eyeball is on any of us enough time, there's going to be some information coming out that it doesn't paint us in a great light. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's one thing I would have always said, or which I think is just fair and reasonable, is none of us can know what it's like to go through that process that he would have gone through. You know, like in a very short space of time, becoming.
It's my nightmare. My nightmare. I couldn't think of anything worse. Like
being that famous and getting that much money that quickly, because that brings different things with it as well. Like basically the idea that you can do and have whatever you want.
Like my dream is like even to go compete in front of like big arenas. Like I just want some guy, 5 of his students, me and 5 of my students meet at my gym and have a scrap in front of everyone, but no one pays for that shit. You know what I mean? I just love the purity of the whole thing. I don't really care about like crowds and signing people's magazines or taking pictures of people. I don't care. I just literally want to see if the shit I worked on in the gym works against this guy. That's it. That's all I'm ever thinking about.
I've seen you speak about that actually. So that's kind of interesting. Like, have you never really had has the aim never been to be able to make a living from fighting?
Yeah, you know, like it was like that. That's kind of nice that I get to do that now. You know, like you know, at different points in my career, you're earning enough money to keep you for a certain amount of time, but then you're scrambling for the next one, like most combat sports people do. You know, but like now I have a steady living from training martial arts and teaching people martial arts and competing in martial arts, which is just the dream for me since I was 6 years old. That's my dream. I get to live my dream every day. It's pretty cool.
That it is. It's unbelievable. Like, you're very lucky that you're doing something that you're actually happy to go into every day.
I understand that. Look, and I understand that there's people in my life, like my wife and stuff, that have like at times when things were bad, made this possible. You know, that kind of way. Like I, you know, so be in a very different situation. It was by myself and trying to make it all work. I probably wouldn't have got here. You know, so I feel blessed. Like.
Yeah, that's class. It is really, really nice. Like, I mean, we'll continue. I'm going to talk a little bit about you and your career in a little while, but I want to continue on that kind of path as well. Like, just talking a little bit about Conor, because obviously he's kind of the man of the moment as well. Mm-hmm. And would you have much of a relationship with him anymore? And like, I suppose not really involvement in the camp, but would there be a relationship there? And you know,
so there's no involvement at all between the camp, because when we first opened, we were SPG, and we broke from SPG. I think it must be 2 years now.
Yeah. Also something I wanted to touch on later on as well.
So there'll be no kind of cross training or any of that kind of stuff. We're basically like rival gyms. But like I still have a relationship with all the guys that I trained with. You know, kind of way. It's still. I'm a bit weird. I'd send the odd message to lads wishing them luck. What I tend to do is, because I know the feeling, if one of the lads loses, I send them a message to see how they are, because I know that your phone isn't hopping when you're sitting out the back and no one gives a shit anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and you realize all the shine's on someone else. You know, so that's when I tend to chat to them. Yeah, it's when I tend to chat to a lot of the lads though that I used to train with. I'll send them a message and go, "Hope you're all right, bro," and then message going, "Fuck, man, you're the only fucker that messaged me." Like, you know what I mean?
Really?
It's just, you know, it's rough. Like, it is. It's rough.
Very much so, especially because I mean, it's not like it's also combat sport. It's also, you know, it's brutal, and it's not like you lose, like, say, oh, you know, I'm from a table tennis background. You lose a table tennis match, and it's like, all right, grand, I'm a bit upset, and then it's fine. You know, you're going home busted. You might be peeing blood for a couple of days. You know, you're
so like it's your pride gets a beating, and so does your body. It's not a nice mixture. You know what I mean?
Definitely not. But as far as like a relationship with Conor, it's probably not something that's maintained too much over the years.
No, like, you know, there'd be odd message here and there, but nothing too crazy. Generally just before a fight. Like I said, we wouldn't have been super close throughout our careers anyway, you know. So it wasn't like we were hanging out with each other every weekend or meeting outside the gym too often, you know. We were kind of like we were friends through training, basically.
I get you. So, like, one thing I want to move on to, and I suppose for some people it's slightly touchy, especially maybe people who are even maybe a little bit closer to him than you would be at the moment. But like, I suppose he's a very polarizing character. You know, from basically from day one all the way up. You know, he's kind of had that demeanor and that kind of character of, you know, getting under guys' skin, at times saying things that maybe he shouldn't have said, making some comments where he could get himself in trouble. And it seemed to progressively kind of get closer to the edge as he kind of kept going until maybe around the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, it kind of all blew up and it all got a bit mad. What was your kind of feeling at that time, or even throughout the whole thing, the whole journey of Conor McGregor? Someone who I've seen you talk before as well, you know, you're not into the shit talk, really, are you? You're not into that bravado. You're not into the nasty side of things. You're a mixed martial artist as pure as they come, as far as I can see. So what was your kind of view of, you know, this guy who you've known for a long time, but at the same time, the face of the sport, very quickly, actually, the face of the sport in the whole world, you know, acting the way he was acting, saying some of the things he was saying, some of the stuff that was coming out about him outside the octagon as well. What was your kind of view, and what do you remember kind of thinking and feeling about it at that time?
I'll just speak to what I actually know. So the stuff that, like, you know, I know actually happened. So there's the only stuff, like some of the stuff that was said before the Khabib fight, I wouldn't be a big fan of. Spoke about so I think he spoke about his religion and his dad and stuff. That's not really my cup of tea, you know. To be honest, like you said, I actually don't like the shy talk at all. I'm not. I have rules in my own gym, the way my fighters have to handle themselves. So like one of them is that, you know, you're talking loads of shit online, or you come in with sunglasses indoors or Louis Vuitton bags, get the fuck out. You're not welcome. Like, it's not okay.
Simple as get out.
That's it.
Go back out.
It's just not what I'm about. It's not what the club's about. It's not my business partner Tom. It's not what he's about either. So if they want to do that, there's loads of the gyms that will let them go there. I feel like Conor's kind of you can see his last couple of fights, the build up. It's been a lot calmer. I think
it's been a transition for sure.
Yeah, I think he reeled himself in. I think what should have really happened is someone else should have reeled him in earlier. You know, someone, not real is probably a strong term. Like, someone should have went, here, man, let's calm this down or whatever. You know, so stepped up and being his friend. Really, like
a view that from the outside, obviously not being privy to anything really, but a view, you know, as we do as fans, we have these kind of probably overinflated opinions and from the outside without having too much knowledge. But one thing that I did always think was, how have the people who are so close to him, like the likes of John Kavanagh, Roddy, and his family, how have they allowed it to get to that stage? Now, of course, nobody can control any one individual's actions or what they do or say, but how has it got to the point where, you know, because some of the allegations that were made about him as well, like outside the octagon, as well as that kind of, you know, how he was carrying himself with the Khabib stuff, and, you know, how has it got to that point? You know what I mean? And it seemed like you were maybe slightly alluding to that as well. Like, how did the close people to him not kind of go, listen, pal, it's getting a bit out of control here?
I don't actually know how that played out. Like I said, I wasn't around myself at the time. Like, it feels like someone should have stepped in. You know, now, definitely. like when you're speaking of stuff outside, like the allegation stuff, I don't really involve myself in that. You know yourself. It's like, you know, it's like that's all hearsay or whatever. You know, like if anyone gave me any firm proof, we could speak on it. But generally, it's just some person that said, like, some stupid WhatsApp group message from some Garda station somewhere, you know what I mean? This kind of crap. We're all going to get locked down with guns at the start of this thing, you know, this kind of stuff. Stock up all your pasta and your toilet paper now. So I just feel like, I don't know if they did, you know. I've never spoke to Roddy about it. I'd still be very close with Owen. And he's like, I don't know if you know Roddy, but he's a great guy, lovely guy. I get the feeling maybe he did, you know, that kind of way. Maybe he tried to step in. I don't know. He just, like, he strikes me as the type of guy that would have, you know. So I like, he's like, he's paying all their wages is a problem, you know, that kind of way.
That's the other
thing. Paying everyone's
wages,
and this happens with a lot of athletes at that level, you know. All of a sudden the dynamic changes, so the coach is no longer in charge. The athlete is now the person. The coach needs the athlete more than the athlete needs the coach, you know.
Yeah, especially when it's one superstar, and, you know, the rest of the fighters who the coach has are good fighters, but not pulling in like the same kind of money that this guy's pulling in, etc., you know,
attention and stuff. So I think as well, for you know, to kind of like as an almost an excuse for the guys. I don't think anyone saw this coming the way it happened, so no one had planned how to deal with it. So it was like, all of a sudden there's all these eyeballs on you and everything's crazy, and you're like, well, what do I do now? And there's money flowing around and there's all other stuff going on, you know what I mean, that you haven't prepared for. Definitely. It was all out of the blue for everyone.
And it happened very, very fast as well. I mean, obviously over a period of a few years, but I think relatively speaking, that's quite a short amount of time for things.
It's only like 7 years, and there was no real conversation before that 7 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like before that 7 years, everyone was going, this is going to be the guy, and everyone was waiting for it to explode and about to go. It was like, bap, bap. That was it. Happened, and then it was massive within it. And like, when it happened, like, it's only been 7 years, but the guy was massive after a year and a half in the UFC. Like, you know?
I remember reading or seeing the video of the Marcus Brimage fight the day after it happened. Like, because, you know, one of these sites, Joe.ie, or one of these guys was on the ball and knew about it. And he was literally, at least in Dublin, he was a big name. Directly after that, people knew him straight away, because the UFC was a brand that was already known. Despite it not being massive in Ireland.
There was a decent following, like, there's a big MMA following in Ireland, but like, they had no one to get behind, you know, that kind of way. So this was it. They were just waiting for it, you know. So it was all. So I think it took everyone by surprise, but it's nice to see the kind of turnaround and go back to the guy that I would have known, you know, and the way he's handling himself and all that kind of stuff. So excited, and the performances seem to be better like that anyway.
Definitely, he definitely looks very, very focused. But something that a question that I've had in my head, and you might be able to speak to this as someone who worked with, obviously, as I've said, John Kavanagh was your coach, long-term coach. You know, someone who's received an awful lot of praise on the back of Conor McGregor, and obviously he has other fighters as well. But and I don't mean this in any way to question him as a coach, or even to question the setup. But I find it very interesting that, and there are other things that play into this, but Conor McGregor, who is the standout, and I'm talking specifically now from this gym as well, the standout who is a striker, and I suppose predominantly a boxer for the most part, of course, very good at kicking and uses kicks as a big part of his game, but predominantly you would have to say a striker / boxer, but comes from a gym where most of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems to me that most of the other best fighters that especially came up with him were jiu-jitsu fighters, were ground game fighters. Would that be fair to say for the most part?
Oh, like I think most of us would have been mixed, like a proper mix. So like my background would have been kickboxing before. Like
Yeah,
I kickboxed since I was 6, and then but like I think a big thing for us was that most Europeans are good at striking.
yeah,
So and that's who you're fighting at the start, obviously. But not like at the time, not a lot of them were great on the ground. So it was easy to take the wins there. But
yeah.
yeah, I get where you're going with this. That like that's not an aspect of his game that he uses too much. Like
And just the kind of the contrast to say the likes of say someone like me who not as much in depth into the MMA as someone else might be. So I say the severe lads who know absolutely everything about the Irish scene. But the likes of the guys we were seeing at the time, so Paddy Houlihan was very good on the ground, right? Ash Daly, as far as I'm aware, very good ground fighter.
yeah, black
James
belt in
Gallagher,
jiu-jitsu.
James Gallagher,
Yeah,
absolute master on the ground. Even the likes of Carl Pendred was very good on the ground. Was kind of had that kind of wrestling style, right? So when I'm looking at this kind of stuff and I'm thinking, how does a guy like Conor, who's not just the best, and maybe this is the most important point, is that not just that he's seemingly so much more advanced on the feet than the guys who were kind of with him in his group, but better than everybody else, more than almost everyone in the sport on the feet. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Comes from a background, a coach who's a jiu-jitsu, who's predominantly a Brazilian jiu-jitsu mind, and a lot of his teammates are kind of maybe more focused on groundwork.
I suppose Conor walked into the gym with a very good boxing pedigree.
So
when he walked into his striking was really good. I think he'd had a bunch of amateur fights. Like I think, like boxing does it a lot different than MMA. An MMA amateur fight is almost like a pro fight. It's a big build up. You have a fight in an arena with a crowd there, and you do 3-minute rounds, and you probably only do 3 or 4 of them a year. You know, that kind of way. That's the way it's done. Whereas boxing, it's almost a spar every week. You know, kind of way. You have it hard. Yeah. So you could be fighting an amateur fight every week, like, or every two or 3 weeks. Anyway.
Definitely when they're fighting the leagues and stuff and they're young.
Yeah. So Conor came in with a ton of experience in boxing. He then there would have been that I would have come in like with kickboxing. There would have been other guys with karate.
I lost you there, Chris. Sorry. I don't know if you can go back there. I just lost you there for about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I was just saying like that. 1 sec here. Sorry, someone trying to get me and they're blocking. So he would have come in with a straight boxing background. Then you would have had like there was a bunch of us that had other striking backgrounds, like kickboxing and stuff. You would have had Gunny from like a karate background, Gunnar Nelson, and then jiu-jitsu after. So he kind of was picking pieces of styles that suited to mix into his game. But like I think the big thing with Conor is, and the thing that really stands out, and it's like, I'm doing myself a little bit of a disservice here as a coach, like, because it's not really stuff you can show too much. He's a southpaw. He's got an extremely long reach, super reflexes, and he's crazy athletic. Do you know what I mean? If I said to you, here's like a new UFC game, make the best striker there. So give him the stats. He literally ticks all the boxes that you tick. You make him a southpaw to make him awkward to deal with. Always in boxing the same. If you look at the champions in boxing over the years, for the percentage of southpaws in society and the percentage of southpaws that were champions is ridiculous. You know what I mean? Because it's just awkward. I know from sparring myself, it's just awkward to move around with the guys.
Yeah, there's less of them, you said.
yeah. And it's just less of them to get, and then to get good ones, and then to get great ones with power. So he has a lot of attributes that lead to being this amazing striking. Oh, jeez, we went again. Sorry, man.
No worries.
There's a lot of attributes to it that probably don't have a lot to do with coaching.
So and
he needs guys there to hold pads and to do all that kind of stuff for him. But he has a lot of the stuff he has naturally, and then all the stuff that people are strong, like you're saying, they were strong at all the other parts of the game, like grappling and stuff. That's all going to benefit a guy that wants to be predominantly a striker, because he's getting dragged into those areas week in, week out by people because they don't want to strike with him. So he's getting to feel the worst areas all the time, improving at defending all those areas, not getting taken down. that's something he doesn't get a lot of credit for. His takedown defense excellent.
His takedown defense is absolutely phenomenal. It's something that
Yeah.
again I want to talk to you about. Kind of, we're going to break down this fight now in a few minutes as well. I'm interested to hear your opinion about the strengths and weaknesses and stuff as well. But it was an interesting thing that came to my mind, because I was, because as I said, it seemed like a bit of a funny one to me, and I was thinking things like, is it a reflection on the coaching? Is it just a straight up reflection on, well, just how special of an athlete or as a person or an athlete that Conor is himself? You know what I mean? Or does it have more of a reflection on the coaching? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of coupled with him being special, that actually he kind of had a lot of it already, or developed a lot of it almost based on what he already had. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think as well, like I've never gone back and watched Conor's boxing fights. I don't know if you can even watch them, because obviously, like we're saying, they're on every week. You don't really record them. But like his style of striking might just be better for MMA than it is for boxing anyway. So everything you learn comes over the power, how to torque into punches from boxing, how to control range and ring generalship and stuff. But then just like the way he holds his hands, a boxing coach would just kill you. The way in general, like, because I've had it going to train places and they're like trying to tell me to do something, like I know that's what you do, but that doesn't work. Like we have to stand square or you get taken down. Yeah. If you stand square in boxing and your head thumped off, do you know what I mean? Like, so
you'll get hit and just get knocked down very quickly because of your balance and stuff. Yeah, but
we have to square up a little bit more. Our toes have to point at guys. Our hips and our shoulders have to point at them. You don't do that in boxing. Make a smaller target. So I think maybe the style of striking involved in MMA just suited him.
Yeah, 100%. It is funny, like all the different variations in how to box in MMA versus how to box, obviously, as a boxer in a boxing ring, which is also why I'm very interested. And I think it's an interesting topic to talk about. Phil Sutcliffe Sr., who's obviously a boxing coach who's kind of come into the camp, and how it will affect, his boxing in an MMA sense. Because I think, getting someone who is obviously very old school, two-time Olympian, I mean, very, very good, knowledgeable coach in boxing terms. I wonder how that translates into training an MMA fighter for an MMA fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of the boxing elements, because obviously his knowledge would be very much, this is how you actually box in terms of boxing. You know what I mean? So do you have an opinion on that, or like any kind of?
Yeah, I kind of think like I think there's and I've done this myself. I go to different people all the time to be coached in different aspects. Like I said, I'm like a purist with martial arts, so I like to learn bits from everyone and take bits and bobs. Jack of all trades, master of nothing is kind of. But I think once everyone knows their place, I think the problems arise when the boxing coach starts to take over. And then he's just shown, like I was saying, lads telling me I have to stand this way or I have to put my hands this way. I'm like, that's great and it's brilliant for boxing. You're 100% right. But if I turn my toes that way, some guy's going to kick my leg off. Yeah. I have to stand this way. So like if Phil is like, right, well, you're going to, for defensively, like slipping shots from this position is a nice little drill, or getting your hands off in this position and kind of working on hand speed and hand-eye coordination, these kind of things. There's so much to learn from boxing coaches for us. It's just everyone knowing who's in charge and what the end goal is. You know what I mean?
And when certain things are applicable, and kind of how to utilize someone like him in the setting, which kind of, as you said, it takes communication, and it takes there has to be the head coach or whoever is going to take charge, whether say it be John Kavanagh or Roddy. Like somebody has to be able to go, no, that doesn't work here, or well, we need to talk and figure out how we can best utilize your knowledge, but to kind of fix it to an MMA fight.
And that can be difficult, and I think like a problem can be like playing with egos. Not, but like it seems like they have everything in check. I know Conor's been working with Phil for on and off for years, and then more recently a lot, and a good while. So I'm sure they've discussed all this stuff. I doubt they went over to a camp, but you never know. But I doubt they went over to a camp and nothing was said. See, sometimes people are afraid of the confrontation of actually saying it. And then
the other thing.
and then the biggest what happens is the biggest like kind of ego or the biggest personality just wins out and ends up controlling the camp. This is why I'm like so strict on everything. I'm like, yeah, like I'm all fun and games in the gym and all, but the rules are the rules. That's it. You know, kind of way. Like, so.
Yeah, 100%. You have to kind of be reasonable and level-headed, but kind of strict on what it is that kind of works and what the rules are.
The other thing is that like I said to you, I was saying all the lads, the year is probably good for them to have off, my lads, because they're all like in their early 20s and stuff, like very early 20s, like 21, 22, turning pro. Having an extra year is good, but the other side is that like they're like, I'm kind of a little bit in charge of how they grow up now. You know what I mean? Like, and mad, so like just to let them run wild, like, is, you know, they have to be answerable for stuff, you know.
Definitely, and it's probably not something that you necessarily thought of, you know, before you became very, very heavily involved in the coaching. It's an aspect that maybe gets a little bit lost, that you don't realize until all of a sudden you kind of go, oh, shit, I'm showing these guys how to grow up a little bit in ways,
and I think I think like some guys just avoid it, like they go, well, that's not my job, like, and it's kind of a weird way to go on. It is like it's part of the job description, you know what I mean?
Definitely, especially I think particularly if you spend an awful lot of time with them, you know what I mean? Like if they're in your gym, you know, a good few times a week, and you're very, you know, it's not just a casual class. You know, if it's a casual thing where they're in and out doing a bit of training, you don't have as much responsibility there. Of course you don't. I mean, maybe you still do to a certain extent, and that's maybe more opinion based. That's a little bit more subjective. But I think, say, you and the likes of your lads, you're talking about guys who are turning over, who are aiming to be top of the food chain. You know, that's a different kind of relationship.
Yeah, and you know, I think just like my style of coaching is very much like I've messaged lads and be like, go home, because I get a message from someone saying they're in a house party and one of the lads is there, and it's a Saturday night, and they don't have a fight coming or whatever, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, right, that's enough for you, go home. And lads are like looking around the room going, where the fuck is he? Like, you know what I mean? I got a lad barred because he had a fight coming up. I got him barred from a nightclub, so he went to walk in one of the nights about 6 weeks out from his fight, and the bouncer was like, sorry man, not tonight, like, because I know the bouncer was like, don't let him in. All his mates went in and he's left outside. I've called the lads gas because they've gone missing for a few weeks or whatever, you know. Like, that's kind of my style of coaching, like, but it's working, like the results are good, so let's keep on it.
That's class. It's very hands-on, but yeah, the gym seems to be doing very well, which again I'm going to come back to that, but